Hi, grade 12s, finally it is your turn. Learn Extra Live, Life Science with Kathy. And I know, guys, we posted on the page earlier saying, please post your questions, and there have been a whole bunch. And I think it's going to be a good session, Kathy. Are you ready for it?
We're doing evolution, guys. You've got to know these theories. They're easy marks. Easy marks. Okay.
And it's 40%.
For this set of exams, it'll probably make up closer to 50% because you haven't done the whole syllabus, remember? You haven't done environment at all, and reproduction still to come. So you're basically doing a quarter, and the quarter is diversity, all right, which will count 50% of your June-July exam marks.
So if they really pay attention in this session, they could actually score 40% of their paper in their June.
We're doing theories, so it's going to be a nice portion of it. And then remember, it's human evolution, so it's how we are the same as chimpanzees.
Yeah, and guys, let's get discussing this on the page. Let us know what you think.
No, let's not. Let's rather just stay safe. You know, they say there are things you don't discuss. You don't discuss sex, you don't discuss religion, you don't discuss politics, and you certainly don't discuss this falls into religion.
Yeah, this is something that you stay away from at dinner parties, eh?
Well, I don't know. Sometimes it can be very funny. But anyway, okay, peeps, here we go. Okay. We're looking at diversity, human evolution theories. They actually are very, very easy. Okay, let's just take it from the start. Remember that none of us were around 5 billion years ago. Okay, none of us. In fact, not even our ancestors' were still around or around at that time. So it's very difficult for anyone to say, I know what happened, this and this and this. Hello, how do you know? Have you time traveled? And if you did, what did you eat when you were there? And how did you survive? So nobody knows. Everything is based on theories. And until they are scientifically proven, we can question them. So please, it's got nothing to do with religion. Don't think of this as religion. It's got nothing to do with religion. If you use religion, then you're basically making an excuse to not learn your work. And this is 25% at the end of the year. And for this exam, close to 50% of your papers. So you know what? Study it. It's a theory. All right, you do all the science guys. I mean, we've done them throughout time, immemorial, Archimedes and Socrates and blah, 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 and Newton's laws. And yeah, there they are. So you know what? Let's go through these as a theory. It's just a theory. So if we look at the theories, we're looking at how can we support the theory of evolution. Now, there is evidence, but it's not inconclusive. That's it. No one can argue. It's all still theories. So we look at the sources. We look at geology, which is the earth and the crust of the earth and etc. We look at anatomy. We look at embryology and genetics and physiology. So for those of you that don't know, geology is the study of stones and the earth and the crust and rock formations and blah, blah, blah. And what we find there is fossils, which are, I don't know, animals, plant matter that's been squished and sort of, it's almost like pressing a flower in a book. Okay, it's sort of pressed there, except that it now almost it forms like a solid structure, and we then have the little fossil that we can look at. All right, anatomy. We look at the shape and the build and the body of things. For example, plants and animals. Plant and animal cells have something in common. In fact, they've got a lot in common. They've got a nucleus. They've got all kinds of organelles inside the cell that are the same. They've got cytoplasm the same as ours. They've got chromosomes the same as our animal cells. They've got a cell wall, and we've only got a cell membrane. So there are similarities. And they say, look, you know what? They're so similar. You know, maybe they sort of started off in the same way. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. All right, then we look at embryology. Embryology is when you get those pictures and you look at a little tiny baby embryo of a tortoise and a fish and a snail and a human and a chicken, and there's some stages of development that we all sort of look the same. We've all got a bit of a tail, we've all got a bit of a beak, we all look sort of the same. And then clearly the development also changes. Genetics, we look at genetics and all the various processes within genetics. And then we also look at physiology, which is our makeup, the way the bodies work and function. Okay, now, if we look at geological evidence, we said, well, listen, the Earth is 5,000 million, 5 billion years old, okay? And we look at the different fossils, and they can date the fossils. People, you've got to know the difference between relative dating and real dating. So your relative dating will be, well, where does it sit in the crust of the Earth? Well, hang on, all these layers, it took about so many years to make them. If this little fossil is found over here, well then relatively speaking it should be about so many years old. Or we use carbon dating, and if you use carbon dating it's a lot more accurate. Okay, so we look at the fossils and we come through and we say, right, the Paleozoic era, which was about 540 million years. Now remember, the Earth is 5,000 million years old. We're saying this 5,000 million year old sphere, okay, really only started having life about 540 million years ago. So it's only like a little tiny portion of what the whole life of the Earth is about. We look at fossils, well, they basically provide evidence, but it's not inconclusive, people. Okay. What I've got here is a little picture of the various types of fossils that we can find. Okay. This is human. Okay. If we look here, we say, right, we have anthropology. All right. Anthropology is the study of humans and all the things that we do. You've got paleontology, which is the study of anything that is found in the ground, and to talk about periods. We've got archaeology, and if you've ever watched Indiana Jones and the what is it? Indiana Jones and the Lost Ark, and Indiana Jones and
it's not me, guys.
And all those Indiana Jones movies, okay? He's an archaeologist. I mean, I think archaeologists watch that movie and think, whoa, if only. But
if only it was like that.
It is. Yeah. But I mean, can you imagine your whole day spent out in the middle of nowhere or in caves and digging holes and finding fossils? I think it must be very cool.
Yeah.
All right. So what archaeology does is they take all these fossils that they find and they use carbon dating, and then they check a progression of forms. Then you've got paleontologist people and an anthropologist. You must make sure that you know these terms because they are going to ask them. And then you have anthropogenesis. Now look at this. Anthropogenesis, now an anthropologist is a person that studies human behavior and the way from old times. And the anthropogenesis, the word genesis means in the beginning. Okay? Okay? Or the creation, or when something starts, it is the genesis. So anthropogenesis is the study of human evolution, all right, and how humans developed as Homo sapiens. And then we look at the superfamily, which is our ancestors, and that superfamily were the hominidia. Okay, and that's where they say, that's where the branch came from chimps, and that they actually like family, but they actually aren't. So remember we're looking at theories, and how are we doing for time, hun?
We're doing good, I think. At least 10 minutes to another break.
Okay, I think what I'm going to do here is do this. There's something I wanted to first do with you, is that we have Darwin, because we're still looking. One of my PowerPoints that I sent through is sort of lost in the ether somewhere, and I wanted to do this with you. If we look at Darwin, Darwin's theory, shame. This poor man has been berated throughout the ages for being an awful person because he came up with the thing that we are sort of related to one ancestor. He never said to primates. He never said to baboons and gorillas, etc., or monkeys. He said that we have a common ancestor if you go back far enough. So with Darwin, Darwin's biggest thing, his biggest theory is survival of the fittest. Okay, so if we look at survival of the fittest, it stands to reason and think. Okay, use your common sense, because this I really do agree with, that survival of the fittest is, we have it all the time. Whoever can achieve the most in the shortest space of time and survive is the organism that will live. It's the organism that will live to reproduce. So, if something is weak, it dies and it is unable to reproduce. And if it can't reproduce, well, guess what? There's not going to be another one of its kind. But if an organism is adapted to survive, then it passes those good genes on to the next generation. And if you were to take, for example, a pride of lions, and you've got Mr. Lion, and he's got his lionesses, and they choose him because he is the strongest. He's the most powerful. So the chances are his genes are strong and powerful as well. As soon as another lion gets sort of a bit cheeky and overconfident, a young lion, he comes along and he will challenge that old lion. And either that old lion survives and he chases the young lion away and says, I'm still the strongest, so he can pass his good genes on, or that the younger lion beats the older lion, ends up with a couple of scars, which is also a good thing because it means he's battled, okay, and he then is able to pass his stronger genes on through the females to the next generation. That is survival of the fittest, and that was what Darwin was saying. And some cartoonist went along and they did all the cartoons and they said, okay, fine, so in other words, we are related to primates. And he said, yes, we possibly have the same ancestor. But remember, they didn't know. And then you are going to get questions on two things. One, based on Darwin. One of them is going to be that Darwin turned around and he went to the Galapagos Islands and he spent lots of time there. I mean, you know, I don't know whether it was a good thing or a bad thing not to have cell phones and telecommunications and Facebook and Twitter and blah, blah, blah. Because those days, the guys just said, mwah, to their family, get on their little boat, end up with scurvy before they got to where they had to get because there were no more fresh vegetables and fruit after 2 weeks and they sailed for like 6 months. Get to this place and be there for 5-10 years, then get back on the boat and hopefully sail home again. So it wasn't weird not to see, you know, your wife would be pregnant when you left and you'd have a 10-year-old child when you got back. That's the way people lived. All right, so what did he do? He went to Galapagos Islands and he saw these finches. And they were very dreary little birds, but they all looked the same except that their feet and their mouths were slightly different. And, well, he didn't have big genetic machines and centrifugal mixers and blah, blah, blahs. So what did he have? He just had his eyes and looking at the mannerisms. And what the difference was with these birds is that they all ate different food on these various islands. Now the islands weren't far enough, were too far for them to be able to fly backwards and forwards. So each colony of birds which came from the mainland developed differently. And it was based on that he started his survival of the fittest theory. And then he came across tortoises, and they were all sort of there, and the one tortoise had a very long neck and the other one had a little short neck, and the one with the long neck lived on the one side where the food was quite high up, and the other one had a short neck because the food was right here where it was. So he looked at different processes where the body will adapt, and those that have those adaptations, if they survive when conditions change a little bit, then those genes, they survived, so they can reproduce, so those genes are passed on. And the organisms that don't make it, well, they're dead. They don't have any offspring, and nothing gets passed on. And it was based on that he turned around and said, you know what, this is how speciation occurs. Speciation, and what is speciation? It's creating a new species. Now we look at this and we say, oh, Darwin, rubbish, rubbish. If I believe him, then I'm related to a baboon. No. But look at TB, tuberculosis. We've got tuberculosis here now, all around us. Okay, we have huge epidemics of TB. And you know what? That bacteria has changed. It's changed so much that it takes us 6 months on antibiotics to try to kill the thing. All right, why? Because it has evolved. Now people, listen carefully. Evolution. Evolution means change over time. All right, evolution is change over time. Diversity is the result of that change over time. Now, they also say, scientists, that our pinkies are getting smaller and so are our baby toes. You think, oh, what rubbish, and you'll take your shoes off and have a look at your toes and you'll all be looking at your pinkies. Why? Because when we type, are we using our pinkies? No. All right, so with every generation and a couple of, they're going to get smaller. There's some people out there that don't have wisdom teeth either on the top or the bottom jaw. Why? The jaw's got too small. That's why we have to have those wisdom teeth out. And why? Because we're not chewing on bones anymore. We are chewing on biltong, though, as good, healthy South Africans watching rugby, but we're not chewing on bones. So our jaws have got smaller, our jaw lines have got smaller, our features are more chiseled. People are not very tall anymore. If you look at the general population across the world, most of the people are around about between 5'4" and 5'8". It's only in certain places that people are taller than that. Little baby toes, well, I don't know. We wear shoes all the time. We're not meant to have shoes on our feet all the time, but the body will adapt. Okay, so please, you've got to, when organs reduce, like our appendix, for example, when they reduce because we don't use them, they are called vestigial organs. Okay, and if they're vestigial organs, they're there, but they're useless because we don't use them anymore. So all of this is what Darwin said. He said, listen, survival of the fittest. When there is a characteristic that will help the organism, it will be passed on. When it doesn't, then the organism dies and you can't pass it on anyway. And then you've got Lamarck. Now remember, Lamarck's whole theory was on use and disuse. So you use something, it develops. You don't use it, it disappears. And you know what? If you need something, you just make it happen. And that's how the giraffe got its neck, because it had to eat high leaves, so it just grew this neck. It's impossible, people. You know that. If you've ever seen anyone who's had a nose job, okay, and rhinoplasty, if the mother's had rhinoplasty, her children, if they are unlucky enough to get the nose she started off with, have that nose that belonged to the original mom. They certainly don't come out of the womb with a beautifully chiseled plastic surgery nose. So all of that is nonsense, and it doesn't even make common sense. I'm going to hand over to
Indy.
Good, darling.
Yeah, well, we've actually got quite a few questions. As usual, Kathy answers questions as they're coming up on the page. It's like she knows. It's like she knows exactly what the learners are thinking. Okay, guys, we're going to go to a quick break. Don't leave those seats. We're back. As soon as we get back, we've still got lots of time in the grade 12 session. See you then. Hi guys, and welcome back to Learn Extra Live. This is Life Science, and Kathy is answering all the questions that you have been wondering about. So if there is anything that you have been struggling with, that you're not understanding, please post it onto our wall. Also, during the show, we will be giving away a winter school book, and this will be for winter school, and it will help you through everything that will be happening in winter school. So it's got exercises that you can work through with the teacher on the day. And all you have to do is post onto our page, post questions, and please make sure that they are specific to what you are studying and what you are struggling with. And I think, Kathy, without further ado, let's get straight back to you. We've got lots to cover.
Okay, some of you were asking about whether I agree with Darwin versus Lamarck. There are structures that we use less and less, and there is proof that they are getting smaller and smaller because we're not using them. But it's got nothing to do with using something or not using something. It has to do with what is in the genes. Okay. Genetically, what is written and coded on those genes. And that is what determines what an organism ends up being. It has nothing to do with how we use things and how we don't. Okay, it's just, it was a comment on the fact that the appendix is getting smaller and smaller. So it was just simply, and our jaws are getting smaller as well. But that could just be that people with larger jaws aren't having as many children, and people with smaller jaws are. So we're ending up with the recessive alleles grouping up to give people smaller and smaller jaws. There are a whole bunch of things that we can look at people. I'm not a scientist and I'm not a geneticist. I'm just a teacher, and it's really everybody, they're theories, they're just theories. But from all of them, Darwin's does make sense in that it is survival of the fittest. Why? If you're good, you pass it on because you can survive. If you're bad, well, guess what? You're not going to survive, so you're dead, so you can't pass it on. It's as simple as that. Okay, I wanted to do allopatric and sympatric speciation. Okay, now speciation, to create a new species. Now both of these, there is a species where the species splits for some reason. Okay, they end up not being able to intermingle for some reason. And there are two big areas that these reasons have been divided into. Allopatric, there is an obstacle. Okay, sympatric ends up with a physical sorry, hang on. Let's just do one at a time. So allopatric, there's an obstacle. Sympatric, there is a break or a divide, but no physical barrier. Okay. So in either case, you're going to end up with a new species. The difference is, allopatric, there's a physical barrier. There is a mountain range. There is a sea. There is, I can't think of anything else, but there's like this big water mass, okay? There's a huge physical boundary which causes these species, species A and species B, and I promise you now you will get a question on this in your exam. Okay, species A and species B, that came from species AB, and they end up developing completely differently based on what is around them and survival of the fittest. All right, that is allopatric. The minute there is a physical obstacle, all right, it creates two separate species. You end up with species A and species B because of this physical obstacle. They don't see each other for long periods of time. Sympatric speciation, there is a development of a new species, but it's not because of a physical obstacle. The organisms end up becoming reproductively isolated. Okay, and that reproductive isolation could be that the gametes in some way change so that the two gametes cannot join during fertilization. It can be that the females and the male's genitals change slightly so that copulation cannot take place. It can, I'm trying to think of all the different examples. It can be that the females come on heat when the males have migrated. So it could be a whole time and climate thing. So people, there are different reasons why, but at the end of the day, with both types of speciation, two new species will develop. But with allopatric, there is a definite physical barrier between the species, and with sympatric, there isn't. And as long as you remember that, you'll deal with any question they throw at you. Okay, anything else? Belinda, talk. Belinda.
Indy.
Indy, sorry.
Don't
Belinda's
worry.
Our producer.
It's a long day. We've got grade 12s. You guys are going crazy on the page. Let's have a look.
What have we got?
I think you should come and have a look, Kathy.
You're going to have to read to me.
Okay, let's see Ashworth. Darwin, on the other hand, has a law of natural selection where a species survives due to being favored by environmental change.
We've covered that.
Yeah. Amy, can you please explain microevolution?
Okay, while you're busy looking.
Yeah.
Micro and macroevolution. Okay. Macro, just people, you know what? If you've listened to me and you've watched the pre-recorded shows and you've watched me here, what do I always say to you? Take the word and break it up into parts that you know, and then try and figure out the parts you don't. Okay? So, if we look at the word micro, micro means small, little. Okay? Macro means large, big. Okay? So, if we have microevolution, it's little, tiny little bits of evolution. And those little bits of changes in characteristics, they happen in little bits. And then when we take all these little micros together, times, we end up with a huge change over the long period of time. So microevolution is little bits, small little pieces of change, and macroevolution is large. Now remember that the changes must be genetic. Now how do we get those genetic changes? We can either have them by, well, we do only have them by what am I doing here? Mutations. Okay. Now remember, we have three kinds of, and I know I sound like I'm jumping, but it's as I get through one thing and I think of something else that they can ask you. You've got three types of mutations that take place ever. All right. The first type of mutation, remember this is in the genes. The first type of mutation is what we call a lethal mutation. And this sings to Darwin's theory. If that mutation is lethal, that organism dies, finished. Boom. End of story. Whatever organism it is, it's dead. It can't survive a lethal mutation. Okay? If it is a good mutation, all right? So we have our lethal mutations, and then we have a preferential mutation which takes place. Now that mutation is so good that it helps the organism to survive. And if that is the case, it becomes what we call a fixed mutation. Oh man, I write legal here. Lethal means bad, and bad equals death. And if it's dead, it can't. Then we have a fixed mutation, and a fixed mutation is good, and it causes survival or helps with survival. And then we have a neutral mutation. And what do you think a neutral mutation does? It's like someone who sits on the fence. I can't decide this way, that way, this way, that way. I'm cool, I'm just sitting here. So that mutation is inside, and then when conditions change, that neutral mutation, if it helps the organism to survive, it becomes fixed. And if that mutation results in the organism dying, well, then it becomes a lethal mutation. But your neutral mutation is both. It sits there and it waits. And when conditions change, only then does it decide if it is fixed or if it's lethal. And an example of a very good neutral mutation would have been something like sickle cell anemia. The gene that causes sickle cell anemia, wow, that is an awesome gene to have if you live in a country where malaria is rife. Because if you have sickle cell anemia, guess what? You're cool when it comes to malaria. Those mosquitoes can bite you as much as you like. You're the one who carries on. And because of that, you survive and you're able to pass it on to the next generation. However, if you have sickle cell anemia and you live here where we don't have malaria in Johannesburg, guess what? You're a very, very sick person. So that is a perfect example of a neutral mutation. When conditions turn and they change, and that mutation helps you to survive, it becomes fixed. It's fixed, so you can pass it on. And if it's lethal, well, guess what? You're dead. So you can't pass anything on. Any other questions, Ins?
Okay. Let me see, because I want to try and stick to what we're talking about. Can I just shout out any question?
Listen, we don't have to. We can do anything. This is everybody.
Exactly.
If there's a learner who's asking it here, I guarantee you there are at least 500 learners or 1,000 learners that would actually like to know.
Well, I did promise somebody, Christian, I said to him that I would ask you. He asks, could you explain the transmission of nervous impulse along neurons and across synapse and like peripheral autonomic N.S.
Nervous system.
Nervous system.
Okay, now you got 3 questions in one there. So
exactly. I said, give me a question. He gave me 3.
Okay, just run it again.
Okay, could you explain transmission of nervous impulse along neurons and across synapse and like peripheral autonomic NS, nervous system?
Okay. What am I going to get through? How many? We got like 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Okay, Han, here we go.
Can we do it?
Okay. Remember,
Christian,
you've got the central nervous system, okay? CNS. Central nervous system is the brain and the spinal cord. Okay, that's it. All right, so brain, spinal cord. Then we have the peripheral nervous system. The peripheral nervous system is everything, so it's the 5 senses. So the eyes, the nose, the mouth, the ears, and the skin, okay? And the arms and the legs and the feet and the little hands, okay? And my godchild will tell me, it's not dressed, it's a stick man that has no clothes on. So we're not going to do clothes now. Okay, so Ashton, if you're watching my dolling, I'm sorry, I will draw a very nice stick man for you when we get home. Okay, so here we go. So it's your 5 senses and all the neurons that take information to the central nervous system so you can respond. Okay, so it's your 5 senses, which will include your eyes, ears, nose, mouth, and skin. All right, all of that. Okay, and then it's thermoregulation, etc., inside the body to make sure that inside the body everything's perfect as well. So that's your peripheral nervous system. It's everything that is around the brain and the spinal cord. Okay, and then we have the autonomic nervous system. And the autonomic nervous system, oh no man, if I run it, okay, there we go. Autonomic nervous system. I'm going to write this out because I want you to see the word autonomic nervous system. And the autonomic nervous system says, hold on guys, I'm actually not too fussed about the peripheral nervous system. I'm not fussed about the central nervous system, but there are things that need to work automatically. Look at the word, auto. So it has to work automatically. Why? Because, goodness gracious me, can you imagine having to worry about your heart pumping, okay, or not, or your blood vessels dilating, constricting or dilating? And remember the difference, if you dilate, you relax when you're dead, so it's big. Constrict, you contract into a little ball. Okay, so to make it constrict, it must contract. Okay, dilate, goes bigger. And if you remember that, that's also good to remember. All right, so autonomic, it works automatically. You don't have to think about it. We don't have to think about our kidneys filtering blood. We don't have to think about our heart pumping blood. We don't have to think about the liver. We don't have to think about our digestive system digesting and sending out enzymes on the food we ate at lunchtime. It happens, how? Automatically. Now, organs have to be stimulated or inhibited. Now, remember, inhibit doesn't mean to stop. Inhibit would be, Indy, come here, darling. Okay,
love
this
being
is the
used as
difference.
experiments.
If I put my arms around Indy and I hold her like this, she can't move her arms, okay, or very little. I'm not a big strong man, but I mean, and this isn't a self-defense class.
I know, I feel
but
like
I mean, if I do this, I'm inhibiting her. She can't move like she wants to. If I did this and I went biff, and she was clops on the ground and out like a light, then I would stop her. And that is the difference between inhibiting and stopping. So please, people, thanks, Indy.
Such a pleasure.
Please be careful in an exam when you're talking about the nervous system or the chemical coordination in the endocrine system, and you say, blah, blah, blah is stopped. It's never stopped. Never, ever stopped. You only stop crying. That's it. That's the only thing you ever stop doing. It becomes inhibited. So if you stop something, it's finished. You chop it off. But if you inhibit it, it's there, but you're not letting it work the way it should. So to stimulate and inhibit. And that is literally what the autonomic nervous system does. So when it stimulates, we say it is the sympathetic autonomic nervous system. It's sympathetic to your needs, and it will stimulate the organs to work faster and make things happen the way you want it to happen. Like, for example, if you have adrenaline and because you see a snake or because someone's chasing you, it is your sympathetic nervous system that says, oh no, we are going to be okay because we've got adrenaline working, we've got the thyroid making more thyroxine, so the whole metabolism increases, the heart's pumping faster, the breathing rate increases, blood pressure increases. Why? Because I'm sympathetic to your needs, hun. I want you to be perfect. I want you to survive. It stimulates the organs. And on the other side, it inhibits. It says, oh, it's cool, man, just chill. when you're hot, when you've done too much exercise and you collapse on the couch in the evening and you just lie there and vegetate, that's because your body says, enough's enough, you need to rest. That's when inhibit happens, and that's when your parasympathetic autonomic nervous system kicks in. And when someone is paralytic, paraplegic, paralyzed, it's like, ugh, all right? You are not sympathetic to anything, you just park off, you para. Para means to sleep, to inhibit. So parasympathetic will inhibit an organ, and sympathetic will stimulate that organ. And that's part of the autonomic nervous system. Over to you, Inns.
Fantastic. I've just posted such a hysterical, you have to come and see this photo quickly. Stop following me. I've just posted on the wall, and it's the evolution, all the guys walking, and there's the last guy's turned around, he's gone, stop following me. I thought it was very cute.
Yeah, I've seen one where they're sitting, you've got the baboon, the classic, and then you got the person going up, 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 and then down, down, as we're sitting in front of our computers at a table. Yeah.
That's me. Okay, guys, we're going to take a quick break, but we'll be back shortly. See you now.
It's gorgeous.
Hi guys, grade 12s. Can you believe that we have gotten to the last 15 minutes of our show? It's been a fantastic show. It's all been about the questions you have been asking and the things that you have been dying to know. I think we know where we want to go from here. There was a question, Kathy, from Sifumle, and he says, please, receptors to reflex arc to reaction to effectors. Kathy?
Okay, Indy told me that about, 30 seconds ago. So I've managed to write down reflex arc and reflex action. So if I'm jumping around, please understand that we're looking at questions which, I know this sounds arrogant, but I'm really trying to answer questions that I know there are a lot of learners that are battling, but that I also know it's a very good chance of you getting asked it in a test or an exam. So, stuff like, did Lamarck sneeze? No, actually I don't care because it's not relevant here, and we're trying to get to as much work as we can. So the difference in a reflex arc and a reflex action. A reflex arc is the path of the impulse. Okay? It's the path of the impulse. That's the arc. The action is the result. So in other words, it's going to be muscle or gland that's going to respond. Okay, a reflex is something else. If we look at, and I think we need to do this first, a reflex is not people saying that Graham Smith, he's not the captain of the cricket team anymore, hey?
There's a new
But he
guy.
was, okay, he was captain for many years. I actually taught Graham Smith. Very, very, very nice kid. Well, he's not a kid anymore, but you know what I mean. Okay, so a reflex, a learned reflex would be Graham Smith playing cricket and putting his hand out, or John T putting their hands out and catching a ball, or Amla smacking a ball when it comes at him. Okay, that is a learned reflex. And you say to me, how do you know the difference? This is how. If I have a brand new baby, that baby has just been born. It has just come out of the womb and we put it on the table. Okay? Anything that that child responds to, that you will respond to, is a natural reflex. Okay, so if we look at natural, it will be something like the pupils constrict or dilate. If we shine a torch. So if I take that brand new baby that has learned nothing, and I take a torch and I flick it across your eyes, your pupils are going to constrict and dilate. Constrict and then dilate, okay? If I do it to that brand new baby, it's going to do the same. If I put something here and I tickle your nose, you are going to sneeze. If I do it to the baby will sneeze as well. If I take a pin and I prick you, you're going to pull your arm away. If I take that same pin and I prick that baby, the baby's going to jerk its arm away as well. All right, so those will all be what we call natural reflexes. Okay, sneezing, coughing, anything that a brand spanking new baby can do that you will do the same is a natural reflex. A learned reflex is catching a ball. If I took anything now, this, which I can't because they'll kill me because it's so expensive, but if I took this and I chucked it at Indy, she would either duck or she'll put her hand up. Okay? If I walked up to her and I did this, just chatted calmly and then all of a sudden made like I was going to smack her, she knows I've got no reason to smack her, but she'll still do this. She'll cringe. She'll close her eyes. Go and practice on your mother, your father, your brothers, and your sisters now when we finish here and watch the way they respond. All of that is learned. Well, how do we know? Because if I do it to a brand new baby, that baby doesn't know that a person is going to hit me when they put their hand in my face like this. They have no idea. They've never learned anything. If a snake sailed past a brand new baby, it wouldn't know, oh my gosh, I am in trouble, I need to get out of here. All right, so there's the difference. Natural versus learned. Now let's look at the process. Firstly, the path that's traveled is the arc. The actual action is what results. So this is how it happens. We start off with a sense organ. So, and in that sense organ, we have a receptor. All right. The receptor takes the stimulus and it converts that stimulus into an impulse. Why? Because an impulse is, as I've told you, the language of the brain. Now, please never put that in an exam, okay? I'm just telling you so that you remember, so that you understand. Okay, so there is the stimulus, whatever it is. Light, sound, whatever. Smells coming from the kitchen and we're all hungry. So the stimulus is perceived by the receptor. So eyes, ears, nose, mouth, taste buds, blah, blah, blah. Okay? And it converts, the receptor converts the stimulus to an impulse. Okay, so the stimulus is converted to an impulse by the receptor. Impulse is the language of the brain. So the impulse now has to travel along a highway. And that highway, you can only drive on one side of the road, remember? You can't drive on both sides of a highway, you'll cause an accident. So you say, right, if I'm traveling to Pretoria, I have to travel on the left side of the road. So here we go, there's the highway. That highway is going to be sensory neurons. And the sensory neurons pass along, now let's say it's from my hand, okay? I've just touched something. That sensation of touching, the stimulus is being converted to an impulse and it passes along the sensory neuron until it gets to my spinal cord, because now it's coming from the peripheral to the central. Okay. At the central, so at the spinal cord, when it gets to the spinal cord, it has to connect. So we now have a connector neuron. And then it goes back onto a sensory neuron. And it finally gets to the brain. Now the brain is going to interpret that impulse. So what I felt, the brain's going to say, cool, that's actually very lekker. So I'm going to nod, I'm going to smack my lips, I'm going to respond in some way. But how do I know to do that? Well, the brain is going to interpret, and then the brain sends messages via the motor neurons. And the motor neurons will then end in an effector, which will be a muscle or a gland. And it will cause that muscle or gland to contract and respond so that the response is relevant to what was perceived in the first place. This is your normal process. Can you see? We start here with a stimulus, goes to the receptor, to the sensory neuron, to the brain, and from the brain it goes to the motor neuron, and from the motor neuron to the effector. Why? Because it is effected. Okay? The receptor receives, the effector is effected. It contracts, it does whatever. Okay. Now we have a reflex action, and a reflex action is there to make sure that we survive. All right, we want to survive. It can't wait all this time. Da, 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 spinal cord to the brain thinks about it, thinks, nice, yeah, and then comes back and then goes and does whatever. That's all cool when we've got the time. When we want to protect ourselves, like when you put your finger on a hot plate, the body says, this idiot has now gone and is trying to burn me. I mean, hello, didn't you listen to your mother when your mom said to you, little, don't touch, it's hot? No, this idiot has now gone and put their hand on there. What am I going to do? I need to get that hand away before the brain even perceives the pain. And that's exactly what happens. And that pulling the hand away is your reflex action. How? Because of this reflex arc. The receptors, there's the stimulus. The stimulus will go to the receptors. The receptors convert to an impulse. The impulse travels along sensory neurons, and when it gets to the when it gets to the spinal cord, it says, whoa, there's no time to get to the brain. I mean, for heaven's sake, if you're still going to go to the brain, we're going to go straight to the motor neuron, to the effector. So you're literally cutting out the whole pathway from here to the brain thinks about it, brain then sends a message to the motor neuron causes the arm muscles to contract, to pull the hand away. It says, oh no. What we're going to do now is to say, goes from here, goes to the spinal cord, connect a neuron, back to the motor neuron here to pull the hand away. In the meantime, the impulse also goes to the brain, and the brain finds out. So by the time you're going, mwah, mwah, the brain's feeling the pain, but your hand's already been away a long time. All of this takes 40 nanoseconds. That's 40 thousandths of a second to happen. Okay, that's a reflex action. That's how quickly. If you go and you take a torch and you just flick it in front of someone's eyes, watch how quickly the pupils respond. It doesn't take, let's think, it's hot, it's cold, it's light, close, iris please, hello. Doesn't work that way. Okay, so that is the difference. Reflex arc is the path that I've done in green. Reflex action is the result by removing the body from any kind of harm. Indiana, over to you, darling.
1 minute left. Okay. The person I'm going to be giving this Life Science Grade 12 book to is, drumroll please, Snazo Sita. Lady, you better be using this well, and you better be sharing it with your friends. I want you to do a study group. There's awesome questions in here. Kathy set them. She knows what the
Kathy
questions.
Took them. She selected them.
She selected them.
She selected them. Guys, go learn. Go learn hard.
Yeah.
Okay? You're going to do well.
You're going to do awesome.
Awesome. Okay, so we're holding thumbs for you.
Yeah, good
go
luck.
And do it. Go and do it. Okay.
Guys, go and take on the world. Have an awesome evening. Thank you so much, Grade 12. See you same time, same place next week. Bye.